Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we continue our series on moods and modes. So today's topic is Look Beyond Happiness. With our speaker today, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We have people still dialing in for lunchtime, and I've got Anushri helping me out on managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Thank you very much. Great to have everybody. Thank you for joining. The title today is Look Beyond the Modes for Happiness. And if you haven't been in on this series, the modes of material nature are forces here in this world described in the Bhagavad Gita, which condition us in such a way that we forget our original consciousness. And the premise of today's talk is that in order to be fulfilled and experience happiness, which is unabated, unsullied, we have to look beyond the modes. Now, how to do that? That's another question. But we're going to answer that. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking about various topics, and when he begins to speak about the modes of nature, he says that this knowledge is indispensable for those who want to have success in life. So it seems like a good investment of our time. Discover indispensable knowledge. And in the subtitle for today's talk, it says, under the pull of nature's moods or modes lies your purest self waiting to be remembered. Recalling the psychologist Carl Jung, he mentions that our real self is in exile, which is a startling metaphor. Who's standing in for us now while our real self, our real identity is in exile? There's a false ego that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. My friend Jeff Walkup, who was a paramedic for several decades, at least two, and who was one of the heroes of the Loma Prieta earthquake era, who rescued people from under the collapsed freeway here in the Bay Area. When he retired from his job, he was given a hero's medal, and he had written an article in the paper that they have for paramedics, and it went beyond that. It got published in several places. And he talked about hiding behind the mask of the hero. He had some revelation about playing a role. So Jung mentioned that we wear various masks. Part of that is our forgetfulness of our real role and our real self. So one of the most powerful aspects of the Vedic system, otherwise known as Bhakti Yoga, also known as devotional service done with devotion. Of course, you can have service with a smile and be getting paid for it. That's a different mood and impetus. But devotional service is that you're doing service out of love. That's the name of this kind of yoga, Bhakti Yoga. One of the very simple and universal principles or practices. Principle and a practice. The principle is that sound carries consciousness and that there are various qualities of sound. And when you engage in mantra meditation, you connect to a higher kind of sound, which is one of the topics for today, the clause I'm about to speak, which is that beyond the modes of material nature, we have a an original consciousness. And one of the ways to reconnect to our original consciousness is through sound. And as I mentioned, this is universal. Practically every spiritual practice in the world employs some kind of sound or reveres the idea that there is a sacred sound. Some revere it almost too much because then they say, don't even say it because it's too sacred. But in the teachings of devotional service, one can certainly say it. One just has to be mindful. So I thought, since I haven't done it for a while, we can start the first few minutes with a short meditation on the mantra Nitai Gauranga, which we haven't sung together for at least 2.5 months by my calculation. And I'm going to repeat this mantra 5 times in the key of C. And I'm going to put a drone behind me. And if you want to try the mantra, I recommend that we start right now. I'll start the drone, put you in the mood. By sitting up a little straighter than you were a minute ago. And come into the present. The body lives in the past, the mind lives in the future, and you, who exist always in the present, exist in the present. And if you'd like to try closing your eyes, please feel free to do so. And relax, but keep an alert mind and bring your awareness to the present. You can become aware of your breathing. Everything breathes in this world. In fact, it's almost as if we're on a ventilator because we can't stop breathing. Once we come into this body, unless there's a glitch somewhere, we just keep breathing till we breathe our last breath. We have a connection to this ephemeral material world through our body and senses, but we exist beyond them. And the mantra that I'll say, and if you like, you can repeat behind muted mics, has 2 names. They're sacred names, Nitai and Gauranga. Nitai is the form of the Supreme, gives unlimited compassion. And Gauranga means those who have, is the form of the Supreme that bestows spiritual happiness, opens the door to spiritual practice. So it's a good mantra to begin with. So I'll say 5 times slowly, and please feel free, if you're in an environment where it won't be a disturbance, to say it along. Otherwise, just listen to the sound and concentrate on it. Nothing else to think of and nowhere else to go. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. And now just be aware that you exposed yourself to spiritual or transcendental sound beyond the modes of material nature. And also be aware that anytime you want to rise above the modalities, you can begin the mantra, become absorbed in it, and rise above the three modes of material nature. And now take a minute to reorient yourself to your external body. You can feel your toes, your fingers. Realize the breath you're taking right now is coming from the world. Your body's part of the world. It lives in the past. Your mind lives in the future. But we're always right here. And open your eyes, and we'll come back into the Zoom room and the topic. Drone C, along with mantra, or mantra along with drone C. So, JM, let's look at the first slide. That will be number 3. What we have here is artwork done by Jai Madhava. And here is a description of the layout of our existence. I'll read it to you. Our original consciousness exists always, and it is also present in all the 3 phases of awareness, namely normal wakefulness, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. These are 3 states which are of awareness, which are induced by our connection with the 3 modes of material nature. And I'll go into more detail about the effects of the modes of material nature in a while. But this is to show, and this picture illustrates that within the physical body, which includes 2 bodies, one is the gross physical body, and the other is the subtle physical body. And the subtle physical body is made up of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Those are 3 elements, albeit subtle elements. The gross material body is made up of the gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. And they get subtler from there, the ones I just mentioned. So in that gross physical body is encased a subtle physical body, but beyond both of those material bodies is us. And our original consciousness exists always. Whatever kind of body we're in, our original consciousness there, but it becomes covered by these gross forms, gross and subtle. And moving to the next slide, find another demonstration of the categories of consciousness that we experience when we're influenced by the three modalities, which are goodness, passion, and ignorance. Alert wakefulness. When I say alert wakefulness means when you wake up in the morning, if that's what you do, you may see for yourself, because it's self-evident that you're conscious and awake. You're no longer dreaming if you were dreaming. Therefore, you become alert to your life. Alert wakefulness comes from the mode of goodness. So you're alert and awake now. I'm supposing and hoping, if you're on the show. Therefore, that's the influence of the mode of goodness, that you're able to have the clarity that I'm here. Sleep with dreaming comes from the mode of passion. So we see on the left an idyllic-like scene, a person in the light of the sun, aware of being alive. Then we have in the middle something that's very familiar to all of us, is dreaming, sleep with dreaming. You see all the objects up there floating around? They look familiar in your dreams. The subtle body carries imagery that we've collected from our experience in the material world. And when we fall asleep, influenced by the mode of passion, those dreams come to us as combinations and permutations of the various experiences we've had here in this world, the various objects we've seen. And sometimes when I say combinations, you may have seen gold and you may have seen mountain, and maybe you'll get a golden mountain in your dream. Then there's another kind of sleep, which physiologically has to do when the various channels, nerve channels in your brain get rerouted into one particular nerve. They're consolidated in one place. You go into this mode of dreamless sleep. And this is the effect of the mode of ignorance. Now, when we go into that dreamless sleep, it's not that we're not conscious. Our consciousness is always there. It's just we're not aware that we're conscious at that time. Or you could say you're conscious of nothing, but you're still conscious. Consciousness cannot ever be denied because denial of consciousness is also a conscious act. We're always conscious, but we're exposed to different states. And in fact, soul or the conscious being, the Atma, just like a particle or a spark from a huge fire. It's the same quality as our original source, who's fully conscious, unlimitedly conscious. We're partially conscious. We're parts of the whole. And our consciousness can be obscured according to the circumstances we're in and the environment that we're in. And now, if we look at slide number 5, we can talk about the fourth state of consciousness called Turiya. That's our original conscious state. That state of consciousness pervades these three states, that is, the aforementioned states, but it's transcendental. In other words, to repeat, when we're aware that we're awake, when we're sleeping and we're dreaming, or when we're sleeping and we're not dreaming, we're in very deep sleep called susupti, sleep with no dream. We're still conscious and we still pervade the environment that we're in while we're in those various states. So in the next slide, the conclusive statement, which may be repetitious, but is one of the main points that I'm coming to. Our original consciousness is beyond the modes of nature. Being covered by the modes of nature, our original consciousness is obscured. Nonetheless, it exists eternally as our real natural state. So logically, that means when we're affected by the three modalities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, we're not in our original natural state of consciousness. And according to the great wisdom literatures of the world, there's a process, it's called sadhana, to come back to our original state of consciousness. Now, there's some good news connected to that, and that is our original state of consciousness is unencumbered by the modes of material nature, but more than that, is positively blissful, full of knowledge, and full of eternality. When I'm under the three modalities and affected by them, I become unaware of my existence. I begin to think that I'm threatened by non-existence. I know that I exist, but I also have a sense that I could lose that state of existence and go into non-existence. It's a very interesting psychological study that some people wish they didn't exist. And let's come back into the room to discuss this because it's a little sensitive. That is that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how one can become so disappointed with one's experience when the self is in exile and we're masquerading in this world as someone we're not. Jam, are you still there? He's frozen. At least he has a good profile. And therefore, when there's a sense that we have a true self and an original state of consciousness, from the perspective of one affected by the modalities, goodness, passion, and ignorance of the material world, I may think that sounds like more suffering. Jam, if you can hear me, bring us back into the Zoom room, please. And therefore, there are various philosophical propositions that the solution to suffering is to stop existing. As existence means desire, means activity. But because desire, activity is entangling and it brings me into suffering, therefore, I'll erase it and I'll erase consciousness. But consciousness can't be erased. It's eternal, you're eternal. We're all eternal. We exist in the past, we exist now, always exist. Therefore, the great sages have combined to contribute to the teachings which bring us to a permanent solution that's much more natural than trying to extinguish our sense of self, which they say can't be extinguished. And that is to uncover our original self, our original selves. When the self is uncovered and we see our real nature, there's an immediate sense of satisfaction. Just as when it's pitch black at night and the sun rises, we may naturally feel joyful because darkness means fear, means ignorance, and the light brings out the variety of the world, possibility for enjoyment. Giving a material example. First time I ever went to Hawaii, I got there at night. Nu'uanu Valley. I went to an ashram there. It was late at night, late flight, cheap flight, got me in late. Went to sleep in the dark. Got up early, and I was sitting in a room when the light came up. And the more it came up, the more I saw the flora and fauna of Hawaii, which is stunningly beautiful. And I just felt overwhelming sense of happiness. The experience of spiritual awakening is described in a similar way. We have a self. It's always there. When it goes into exile, when we lose our sense of who we really are, we're in darkness, covered by the modalities. Whether they're goodness, passion, or ignorance, we're still covered. We've still lost touch with our real self. But when we're able to, through the process of devotional service, reclaim ourselves or uncover our real nature, there's a sense of great joy, as described in the Bhagavad Gita and other literatures. It's called Brahma Bhuta. When you realize that, oh, I'm a self that can't be extinguished. What's more, I'm full of light. In the Gita, Krishna says that experience brings immediate happiness. It's not that you won something. It's not that you got a package from Amazon Prime and for a few minutes you feel satisfied till you realize that you open the package that's the wrong size or color. It has nothing to do with material gain, which we all intuit can be lost at any moment. As soon as you get something, it starts getting old. But he says, Prasanatma, we're naturally happy and we discover our original natural happiness. And that sense of lamenting for the past or hankering for a future adjustment of our situation in which we think by adjustment we'll be happy, we don't care about that anymore because we're right there in the present. What's more, we're not afraid of other people or other living entities because we see our common source. There's an overwhelming sense of universality that we're all part of the same whole. So there's no dichotomy, friends and enemies. Everyone's interrelated. These are the three preliminary realizations that one gains from rising above the material nature, becoming uncovered of the three modes of material nature, and seeing one's self and seeing the source of oneself, something to work for. Work means there are certain practices, and by taking a little trouble, which is called tapo divyam. Tapa means there's a little heat. Have you ever done anything that you didn't feel like doing, but you knew it was the right thing to do? And then later on, you felt so happy with yourself because you did the right thing, even though it took a little trouble? Jordan Hill gave a heart. She was the first one on the emoji. Oh, a Zoom user also did it. Thank you, Zoom user. That's somebody's robot hanging out down there. And Mukaravinda has got it. That's what's exciting about being a human being. We realize that if I put in the work, then I can improve myself. Same thing with spiritual practice. Thanks, Lucas. And so this is something to look into. It is tapodivyam. It's the same kind of work you do when you go out for cross country and you run until you feel like your lungs are going to burst, or water polo, or you want to become a doctor. That's the 14-year prospect. Hate to break it to you if you're in medical school, but it takes a long time. And tapo divyam means, it's called divyam means something that's beyond the modes of nature. If you practice for that, the trouble you take, there's cash back on that one. That's the biggest payoff of them all. So it's good to know the framework. What are we working with here? We already exist. We're already in, we already pervade with our consciousness the various states we're exposed to in this world. But because of misidentification with a false self, a doing business as, we filed a DBA. It's not really us. We just pretending to be something we're not. There's an overwhelming sense of cognitive dissonance that we can't shake, no matter how much stuff we get from Amazon Prime, how many degrees we get, how much money we make more money, the cognitive dissonance doesn't go away. But when we awaken to our true self, and the sun comes up and we see ourself, we see the source of ourself, that is a sun of complete awareness beyond the modes of material nature, that state of turiya, beyond alert awakening, beyond sleep with dreaming, and beyond dreamless sleep. There's another state that is turiya, above all three modes of material nature. And in that state, we feel naturally happy. The cognitive dissonance that's been dogging us forever, not just this lifetime, but every previous life. I mean, what do you feel like when you're a squirrel? Try to fit in with all the other squirrels, but you're always aware there's a predatory bird, even here in the suburbs. Did you know there's predatory birds here in the suburbs? You would think they would have a sign outside. This is suburbs. No predatory birds. Please don't eat the squirrels. Nope. I once came down my back balcony. It's not a balcony. Yeah, it's a balcony. No, it's a deck. And at the very bottom of the stairs was a little gift that a predatory bird left for me, and it was half a squirrel. I wrote a little vignette about the half a squirrel. Somebody tore the squirrel in half. The squirrels have cognitive dissonance because when they see a shadow over their head, they could be destroyed at any minute, even though they're innocent little creatures. Everyone lives in that type of fear here in the material world. So rising above the material nature means rising above the modalities. Okay, now I'm going to try to provoke a conversation, but I'm going to show one more slide. And that is from the Bhagavad Gita. And this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which we find at slide number 7, is from the 14th chapter, which is entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, there are references to the modes of nature, and in the Vedic system, it's expected that you will have studied this. Just like if you're in Algebra 1 or 2, it's expected that you would have learned addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time when you get to algebra. But to speak of other higher forms of math. That's why it's a prevalent teaching there and also in various other places where the guidance comes that learn your modes, know your modes. Really helps because we're affected by the modes. And when we know what each mode looks like or how it shows up in our lives, then we know what the effect's going to be on us. But even more importantly, we can learn how to use one mode to rise above the next. You can use the mode of passion to rise above ignorance, and you can use the mode of goodness to rise above passion. And from the mode of goodness, you're really at the top level of the modes. And then you have a solid launching pad where you can get to Turiya, or the fourth dimension, beyond the three modes of material nature. It's much harder to jump out of ignorance or passion. But from goodness, Sattvam Yad Brahmadarshanam, says in one of the ancient wisdom literatures called Srimad Bhagavatam, from sattva, goodness, it's much easier to attain Turiya. So that's where it takes a little work too. You have to study the modes, learn how to parlay your way up from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion to mode of goodness. Then you have a clear shot. Now here's a general piece of information from the Bhagavad Gita itself, which is considered authoritative spiritual knowledge. When the eternal conscious living entities come in contact with nature, they become conditioned by the three modes. So everything is made of the modes. The modalities are pervasive. If you look at those squiggly lines down there, we can interpret those a little bit. They look like threads. The modes are also thread-like. And they combine, just like when you make a cloth and you have the otum and the protum. Anybody here a weaver? Any weavers on the show today? When you weave cloth, You, you have horizontal and vertical. You keep throwing this little weight that goes through, and again, you cross them over until they become one thing. But they're actually two things. And in the case of the modes of nature, it's three things: goodness, passion, ignorance, but they're woven together. Everything we see around us is made of these modes. And we get covered by those. We're conditioned by those, but there's a way to rise above them. Now, a little more education about the modes. In the next slide, although I gave you a list last year, last session, I read it out. There are more descriptions, and it's edifying to hear them. Slide number 8 talks about goodness. Now, just listen carefully to the description of what sattva, the highest mode, induces in us: mind and sense control, tolerance, discrimination, sticking to one's prescribed duty, truthfulness, mercy, careful study of the past and future, satisfaction in any condition, generosity, renunciation of sense gratification, faith in the spiritual guide, being embarrassed at improper action, charity, simplicity, humbleness, and satisfaction within oneself are qualities of the mode of goodness. Did you like any of those? They're too nice. Okay, here's the next one. We got to hear passion and ignorance still, JM. Then I'll revert to the conversation mode since I'm hogging the whole time here. Passion, rajas. Ready? Buckle your safety belts.
Yeah.
Okay, Antonio, here I go. Material desire, great endeavor, audacity, dissatisfaction, even in gain, false pride, praying for material advancement, considering oneself different and better than others, sense gratification, rash eagerness to fight, a fondness for hearing oneself praised, the tendency to ridicule others, advertising one's own prowess, and justifying one's actions by one's strength are qualities of the mode of passion. Antonio, you're not on mute anymore, just so you know. Okay, one last one. Are you ready? This is ignorance. Brace yourselves. Intolerant anger, stinginess, speaking without authoritative reference, violent hatred, living as a parasite, hypocrisy, chronic fatigue, that's not caused by illness, quarrel, lamentation, delusion, unhappiness, depression, sleeping too much, false expectations, fear, and laziness constitute the major qualities of the mode.
Yeah.
Antonio, you came off mute. So now we have a few minutes before I go into the grand finale of the slideshow for any questions. Bashasheka, what do you mean by this or that? Are you really going to stand by that? Or if you have any reflections, anything you heard, Jai Hari, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Please accept my humble obeisances. Um, I'm I'm very interested in Turiya because briefly the first time I read about it was just like a month ago, and I'm very grateful that you're speaking about it. But I don't quite understand it, and I wanted to know if Turiya, by definition, is equivalent to Krishna consciousness, and if it is, then this in this state, why is it not just referred to as Krishna consciousness? Why is it referred to as Turiya? Basically, is there a difference between Turiya and Krishna consciousness?
Basically, there's not a difference, but in the context of talking about three modalities,
Hmm.
it's useful to have a parallel term that describes another stage. However, when you study the condition of Turiya, it's also called Shuddha Sattva, and that is purified goodness or pure goodness, not purified, but pure. There's no effect of any of the modes. Goodness is really close, but it still has tinges of everything else. Kind of like if you have white cloth, do you do any laundry?
Yeah, most of my
You
cloth
have
is like orange.
you have a nice orange shirt on the top, right? So let's say that you think, well, I've had this a while, so there's these white sheets. I'm going to throw them in the laundry together. And then when you take them out, you can barely see it, but the white sheet's no longer white. It's got a very nearly indistinguishable, but it's still there for the naked eye, a pinkish hue that comes out of that orange that you washed
Mm.
your sheets with.
Yeah.
Yeah, they may be relatable because it happens. And goodness in the material sense, still considered under the modes of material nature, although it's getting really pure, it still has tinges of the others. And the problem with that is it's kind of like cancer in a way. When an oncologist, they're known as Mohs surgery or surgeons. They're plastic surgeons, but they deal with cancer that grows on your face. And what they do is they take out a portion of it and then they take it to the microscope and analyze it to see if the periphery still has any cancer cells. And if it does, then they take a wider circumference of skin off until they get to a point where there is no more tinge of cancer. Sorry, Joaquin. And and then they know that it's gone. There's no more there. So when you come to the mode of goodness and you rise above it, it's called Turiya or Shuddha Sattva, which means it's goodness with no more tinge of the modes of nature at all. And there's a famous statement in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In Sanskrit, it says Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. When you reach that stage, then you can naturally see your source, Vasudev. So you naturally come to the realization of yourself and the source of yourself.
Mm.
Like when you see the sun in the morning, you also see yourself. If it's pitch black at night, you can't see yourself. But when the sun comes up, the sun's there, but then oh, I exist also. And we're the all we exist also group because we also exist as part of the whole. And so when we see our whole and we see the pure light of the whole, which means that we recognize our original conscious personal source, then we also realize our personal identity that's eternal, then it's beyond the modes of nature. Does that help?
Yeah, it does help a little bit. Thank you so much.
Well, how
May I
can I
just
help?
may I just ask one follow-up question really quick?
Yes, everyone gets a follow-up question
Oh, thank you so much. So,
per year.
is this progression from the modes going above the modes to the Shuddha Sattva state? And you were talking about the tinges of the other modes. Is it like a kind of like an all or nothing deal? Or could you be sometimes in Shuddha Sattva, but then most of the time in passion and ignorance?
No, Shuddha by definition means that there's no more passion or ignorance.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. I did better on the follow-up question and answering in one sentence. Okay, who else has a question or a reflection? Thanks, Jai Hari.
I had a question, Guru Maharaj. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna. So when you talked about being in the modes of nature, is there like a light we exhibit which is different when we're on a lower vibration versus when we're on a higher vibration? Sometimes they call that aura, but I remember seeing a visual somewhere which showed like the color changes, and I wasn't sure if that's.
absolutely. You can see it in yourself, you can see it in others. For instance, if somebody becomes angry, they they have been affected by the mode of passion. And from that anger, one's face becomes polluted. If you've ever noticed yourself, you look in the mirror and it's like, oh, I look terrible. And mode of ignorance, those who are addicted to something, they feel guilty about it, and they're pulled down into a dark state in their life. You can see it in their countenance. And when somebody's in the mode of goodness, they look illuminated. There's a lot you can read in the physiognomy of somebody who's in passion, goodness, or ignorance. And that all comes from the qualitative differences in the modes of material nature. And of course, that carries over different kinds of bodies that we take from a previous life are naturally more in one mode or another, or combinations of certain modes. And you can study the science and see it. Those who study such things become really good at it. Like even people who are very good at medicine, whether it's allopathic or Ayurvedic. Once an Ayurvedic doctor came into, I was sitting in a um, public place with some friends in this place of pilgrimage, and the person had received some Ayurvedic medicine from this renowned doctor. He actually delivered himself. And my friend just said, why don't you just look at my three other friends here and give them a quick analysis just by looking at them? And he went through, he was like, okay, now you're eating too much of this or that. He looked at somebody else, said, you're in anxiety, too much anxiety. And practically after he left, everyone said, wow, that was really accurate. So there's a way we can see the telltale signs of goodness, passion, and ignorance in our countenances, and as you're describing, our effulgence. Those who are sense controlled, who are cultivating goodness, you look at them and you go like, "Whoa, you're bright. Look at the light coming out of you." Yes, so it's definitely noticeable. Okay, JM, I have three more slides. Let's try that. Joaquin, please go ahead.
Hi, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances. Yeah, so just from what you were saying right now, so it is possible, or is it possible to be in like in mixed modes, goodness,
Yeah,
passion, and ignorance at one time?
always. It's always a mixture because the modes are always fighting for supremacy. Somebody's in the mode of goodness and then they get affected by passion. You might have experienced in your own life. You cultivate a habit of goodness and you're sailing along, and all of a sudden it's almost as if you were swimming and you got pulled from, one of your legs got pulled down and you get pulled into you get pulled under the water. And you're like, how did that happen? It's because the modes are very powerful and they're always mixing. And somebody is hanging out in the mode of goodness, unless they're really careful, they'll get affected by passion or ignorance and vice versa with all the different modes.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay, slide 11, the all-important slide. From the Bhagavad Gita again, on the chapter that describes the modalities, Krishna says the following: when the embodied beings transcend these three modes associated with the material body, they become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and enjoy nectar even in this life. So it's not inconsequential to rise above the three modes of material nature. And when we're still conditioned by the modes of material nature, it's as if we're in a prison. We can look out, we can see the free light outside and see what it looks like. But it doesn't mean we can go out there. Still have to stay in the prison. And when we're in this body, we may get theoretical knowledge of the self. We may even have a vision of, I'm not my body. But as long as we're conditioned by the modes of material nature, we're still restricted by the habits dictated to us by the modes of material nature. And just like bars, we can't get free from them unless we do. And that brings us to the last slide. Advice for those in the modes. One of the most prevalent descriptions of a way to not just detach, or a symptom of one who's risen above the modes, and also one of the ways in which one does rise above the modes of material nature is to remain neutral in ups and downs. In other words, don't become more entangled in them by reacting to the modes. When you can become indifferent to the modes and aware of the fact that you're not part of them, they're just a part of the material world from which you're separate, and you practice being neutral in happiness, distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. Doesn't mean not to do your due diligence. You have to do that. But whatever comes of it, yes, Jordan, perform your prescribed duty, and easy to say, thy live course. But it's a practice. And the other is to meditate on transcendental form. There's two items there. We started the session today by mantra. Mantra is a transcendental form, actually. It's like a zip file. It contains information that we don't necessarily see right away, but within the mantra is the form of the mantra. And when you meditate on the sound, you're meditating on the form of the mantra. And it's that form which is called an avatar, which can pull us above the modes of material nature. That's why mantra in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali Muni talks about being neutral, talks about meditation, and then he says, if you're able to utter the mantra, which he describes as Om, you can shortcut the process because it's all powerful. And therefore, in the process of devotional service, the embracing of the mantra is considered the primary practice. And if you can study the mantra and perfect the mantra, then you'll naturally rise above the three modes of material nature. And therefore, you can practice something positive, not just avoiding this, avoiding that, which is very difficult to do, but you can employ the direct process of mantra. And again, we started with it at the beginning of the hour, and now the hour's over, just like that. thanks everybody for joining. It's been an unmitigated pleasure. Thank you for your kind attention. Great to see you all. And a little bit of melancholy in parting. So to cheer us up, I have a suggestion. The yogis who live high in the Himalayas, when they come out of meditation, they see one another on the peaks of the Himalaya. They feel, oh, there's a kindred soul. And they have this ritual where they raise their hands really high in the air and they call out this mantra as a greeting, either in saying hello or goodbye, it goes Hari Bol. It means keep it up, keep the transcendental vibration going. I think it's appropriate. What do you think? Let's
Yes.
vote.
Yes.
Democracy.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. You can do it if you want. Hari Bol.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Thanks, everybody.
Haribol. Thank
See
you.
you again soon.